Hi bakers, we're going to be doing salted caramel fudge this week. So like last week, I've laid out all of my supplies and ingredients, and I've taped my recipe and instructions on my cabinets here so they'll be easy for me to refer to. We're going to start by making the caramel sauce so that has time to cool and thicken before putting it on top of the fudge. So our ingredients for the salted caramel, or actually just the caramel because we'll salt it at the end, is we'll go ahead and start with our 1/4 cup of butter. And you're going to see here 4 tablespoons equals 1/4 cup of butter. So most butter sticks have that nicely labeled for you. So really we just need to cut it in half. And the good thing is we're going to need the other half. Well, not all of it, but most of the other half for our fudge. So, and to help with this melting, I'm going to go ahead and slice it up a little bit here. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that in my small saucepan. I have not turned the heat on yet because I want to get my ingredients in there first. Okay. So the next thing we're going to add is 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. You can use either light brown sugar or dark brown sugar. Either will work just fine. Go ahead and make sure that 1/2 cup is packed to the top and add that on in. Done with that. And then we are going to add 1/8 cup of milk. I do not happen to have an 1/8 cup measuring cup, so I'm going to do 1/2 of a 1/4 cup. Put that in there. And then we'll go ahead and get our heat started. I happen to have a gas stove top. You might have electric, but we want to do this on a fairly low heat. Okay, and while that's getting started, I'm going to go ahead and put my milk away so it stays fresh. And I mentioned in our instructions that you need a spoon that can handle the heat. So some sort of a heat-safe spoon, because you're going to want to keep this stirring once that butter starts to melt so you can get all of the ingredients combined. I'm going to pull out a plate so I can rest this spoon on it for a second. Actually, that is going to take a little bit of time here to get going. So we're going to go ahead and grease our pan for the fudge while we let that butter start doing its thing. So I am going to grab, you can either use, need just a little tiny bit of margarine. If you have saran wrap at home, you can use a tiny piece of saran wrap. If you don't have saran wrap, a plastic baggie works just as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take this saran wrap, cover my fingers, and dip it in my margarine. And then I'm going to use that to spread throughout to grease this pan. Didn't grab quite enough, so I'm going to go back in, grab just a little bit more. And again, the butter is on that saran wrap, not on my fingers, to go ahead and get this completely greased. Okay. Should do that, so we can go ahead and throw away that saran wrap and put that margarine back in the fridge so it stays fresh. And I did get a little greasy, so I'm going to wash my hands super super important always to stir with clean hands and wash them as needed throughout your recipe. Okay, let's see what's going on here with this butter. Starting to soften up for us a little bit here, so we're going to go ahead and get that stirred. That's going to need just a little bit more time. Could have cut that butter up just a little bit smaller. Go ahead and turn my heat up just a smidge more to let that keep getting happy. And while that butter is going a little bit more, let's go ahead and line this with our parchment paper. And you want enough parchment paper so it goes completely up and over the edges here. Whoops! Somebody in my household left just a little bit of parchment paper in there. I bet that never happens in your household. So I'm going to tear off about this much. And we didn't talk about it earlier, but I put it in my list of supplies. You're using a square pan, a smaller 8x8, not a big old casserole pan. You're using a smaller pan. And you're going to want it so that the edges come up over. This is what's going to make it easy for you to get your fudge out after it's cooled. Okay, so that's lined. We'll put this back away, our cling wrap back away. Ready for our next project. Okay, let's go back on over, see what our butter's doing. So you're going to see it starting to bubble up a little bit. That butter is almost all melted there, which is good. We're making good progress here. So I'm using my spoon and just trying to get that butter combined with that milk and with that sugar. We really want it so that we don't see that butter anymore, those chunks. All right, so that butter is completely melted in there, which is fabulous. So I'm going to shake that off, set that aside, adjust the heat just a tiny little bit, and we're waiting for it to get to a gentle boil and to thicken a little bit. So we're going to have to wait on that. While that is starting to boil up, I'm going to go ahead and grab out my glass bowl I'm going to need for my fudge. And then my other saucepan. Check on this. Ooh, it's boiling. Let's stir that up. Okay. And that I think is going to need just another minute there. I reduced the heat just a tad. Let's go ahead and set our timer for 1 minute. And then that should be ready after that minute to sit down, sit aside, and just let it thicken and cool. All right, that is starting to smell good too. That is probably a little too heavy of a boil. Let's turn that down just a little bit more. All right. Very good. And while that is counting down, let's go ahead and put some water, tap water, in our other saucepan. I filled it up about 1/3 of the way. Set that down there. is looking good. All right, so let's go ahead, and you'll see when I take that spoon out, see how that caramel sauce, yum, that is gonna be delicious later. So let's go ahead and turn off the heat, turn off the timer, and then our last step with this thing is to add a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract into that caramel sauce. And that does it for that one. Perfect. All right, you saw that made that bubble up. That was kind of exciting. Okay, let's stir that vanilla in there. All right, that guy is ready to just hang out for us. Move that over so it's no longer on the heat. Go ahead and move over that spoon so we'll have that for later because we'll stir it here and there. And now we're ready to go ahead and get our water going for our fudge. So I've started that. Go ahead and start it on about a medium setting so that water can go ahead and start getting hot. All right, we are ready to get this fudge party going here. We're gonna open our can of sweetened condensed milk. You can use whatever brand. I usually buy whatever's on sale, oftentimes the store-bought, which is totally fine. Now that is going to make that can opener quite sticky. So I don't want to put it back in my drawer like that. I'm going to give that a good washing later. Go ahead and peel that top up. Oops. Try and save as much of that yummy goodness as I can. And we're going to go ahead and scoop. Take a spoon and scoop this condensed milk into our glass bowl. And you've got to scrape it a little bit. It's pretty sticky, pretty ooey gooey. You want to get all that goodness out of there. Got a little sticky working with that. So again, always got to have your clean hands. Okay, and to the condensed milk, we're going to add one, whoops, this is brand new and it is being stubborn. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. My brand new bottle since we just used up that old one. So we need our 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Go ahead and put that in there. And then this time, I'm going to use our trusty old fork to just get that combined and happy together. Okay, that looks good. We want to keep that fork handy. We're going to go ahead and get another plate. Keep our utensils on. You'll see our water starting to get a little bit of bubbles in it, starting to get a little warm. So we can go ahead and rest our glass bowl right on top of that. And it's that heat that's going to do the trick. So since the water's getting happy, we're going to go ahead and turn that heat down a bit. And to this, we're going to add, you have some choices here. The recommendation for the recipe is to use dark chocolate, preferably Ghirardelli. What I usually use is 1 bag, which isn't quite 16 ounces, and then I supplement with some semi-sweet chocolate chips. But for the taste of this crowd, I'm going to go ahead and just use the semi-sweet, since that's what I have a lot of right now. If you're using semi-sweet chocolate chips, you're going to do 2.5 cups of those. And then either way, you're also adding in 3 tablespoons of butter. We still have a half a stick, which is 4 tablespoons. So I just need to cut off the end, which I'll save for another recipe. And once again, we want to cut this into smaller pieces because that'll make it melt quicker in with all that yummy chocolate. So let's go ahead, and I'm cutting it right on that wax paper that it comes with. Just slice that up into smaller chunks. And the other way as well. Set that knife down. Let's go ahead and get those chocolate chips in there. Also wanted to recap my vanilla. You don't want to spill vanilla. It's really expensive. And that is a bummer when you accidentally knock it over. Alright, so again, if you're using semi-sweet like I am tonight, you are going to do 2 full and 1/2 cups. Whoops! Alright, let's try that again. 2 full. So there's our first one. That sliced butter right on the top of those chips. And again, that'll be easy to spread out because we've cut it up pretty small there. Alright, let's take our trusty friend, the fork. And then this is when you're going to need a towel or an oven mitt to hold the side of your bowl. It's going to be quite warm as you're working here to get that all combined. I'm going to adjust how I'm holding this so you can see, and my hand is comfortable. Alright, so you're seeing the chocolate is already starting to melt along the sides. When I do this with the Ghirardelli chips, they're a lot larger. They take a little bit more time. These are smaller, so they're going to melt easy. So, oops, my pot's doing a little dance across the stove top here. So it's really just constantly stirring so everything melts evenly and nothing gets too sticky. And I'm really kind of scraping up the sides here, putting a little muscle in it. A little arm workout this evening. But it is really melting nicely. Give my arm a break for just a second here and turn my attention back to the caramel sauce just to check on that. It got a little skin on it while it was sitting, so we're going to just give that a quick stir. That still looks pretty good. Now that I'm checking it, I think I would like it a little thicker than it seems to be as it's cooling down. So I'm going to go ahead and put the heat back on that for a second. I'm just gonna put it super low. Super low, just to let it reheat and thicken back up. Okay, back to our chocolate. Can't let this buddy be unattended for too long. So just stirring. See if I can get this. There we go. Bowl to cooperate a little bit better with me. And I can really hear, it's probably way too quiet for you guys, but I can really hear underneath how that water now is boiling up under there. And again, that's what's melting this chocolate for us. Making some good progress. Make sure you're getting the sides of that bowl so that chocolate doesn't stick there. And really our goal is for these chips to be melted and smooth, and that butter to be completely combined in there. I'm still seeing one little chunk floating around as I'm stirring. We are almost there, friends. Almost totally melted. Oh boy, doesn't that look good? All right. That really looks good enough to me. So we're gonna turn that heat off. I'll leave that fork set in there. All right, this saddens me greatly, but the counter's kind of like the floor. Once it's hit the counter, we probably shouldn't be eating it, so there we go. All right, so our pre-greased, parchment-lined dish is where we're headed next. And I want to go ahead and scrape all this yummy chocolate off this fork. Don't want to waste. There. I think I got most of it. Okay, so that can go in the sink. All right, and this is where you've got to be careful because this bowl is going to be hot. So I'm going to try and scrape it away from where I'm grabbing as best I can. This is why I like to use a towel whenever possible. Because it can just go right in the laundry when we're done. It's probably going to get chocolate on it. So whatever you're using, be prepared. Probably going to end up a little chocolatey at the end. So I'm holding it just from the edge there with the towel so not to burn my hands. And again, I want you all to be super careful when you're doing this because this bowl is hot. You can see the steam coming up from the water behind me. Okay, so you want to get as much out of the bowl as you can. Again, that is yummy stuff. You don't want to waste any. I'm going to set it back down so it can just cool there. And now it's time to go ahead and spread this so it is smooth. Almost got kind of a little bit of a greasy texture to it, like a glossy texture on the top, or a look, which is fine. That's the way it's supposed to look. trying to press it, you know, as far out to the corners as I can. You'll see it's not going to be perfect squares when you cut it at the end, and that's fine. I'm going to set my spoon off to the side. All right, let's get back over to this caramel sauce here. Oh yeah, that little bit of extra heat has helped it to thicken up a bit. So, see that? It's a nice there. Okay. So, we're gonna kind of switch gears here. I'm gonna move this out of the way. Again, everything is still really hot, so you definitely want to be careful with things here. So before I go ahead and put that caramel sauce on, I'm going to let it cool for just a second so we can talk about alternate toppings. I make this fudge regularly. It's great plain. Sometimes I will crush up, like around the holiday time, I'll crush up peppermint stick and put that on top for peppermint fudge. That is delicious. You could crush up M&Ms. You could crush up some pretzels and do the caramel sauce. Really, your options are unending if you'd like. So lots of choices there in terms of what you might want to put on your fudge. But for today, we're going to go ahead and drizzle that nice caramel sauce on top, and then we're going to finish with some Himalayan sea salt, which I'm going to go ahead and pull out now. You can use any coarse salt that you might have around. Again, I have this real fun pink Himalayan sea salt that I like to use with the grinder. It adds a little bit of a crunch, something special to it. So that's a favorite in my household. All right, so we've got our caramel sauce. And you can see it's a little runny, but it definitely has thickened. So we are going to take this and kind of drizzle it on top of our fudge. And it doesn't have to go in any particular pattern. I'm kind of using a slotted spoon, which is making things a little bit interesting here. And you may decide that this is too much. I actually halved the recipe, the original recipe. I think I'll probably keep this left over and put it on some ice cream tonight. That'll be tasty. But I think I've used about half of our recipe, and I think that looks good enough for what I was hoping for. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to the side. Again, not letting that go to waste. That is going to be ice cream topping later. So, and now I'm going to go ahead and take my sea salt, turning it over, and I'm going to grind just a bit, not a ton, on top. Shake the extras. And that is it, my friends. So there we go. We have our salted caramel fudge. It needs to firm up, harden, and cool in the fridge. I'm going to cover this with the lid that comes with this Pyrex. I'm going to put it covered in my fridge for 2 hours at least. You know, sometimes I'll make this and I'll just cut it the next morning, but definitely wait at least 2 hours before cutting it and serving it to your family. When you do go to cut it, let's talk about that for a moment. You're going to pull out whatever cutting board you are wanting to use. I usually use a pretty decent sized one. I set it on the counter, and you're going to lift the whole situation out with your parchment paper. And I usually just cut it on the parchment paper, although you could remove it. You're going to have to be careful because of the caramel topping. But it will come out fairly easy since you greased the side of your pan. You're going to rest it down and cut it in roughly 1-inch chunks each way. And it is tasty. Once you've cut it, you'll want to keep it refrigerated until serving, and it can last quite a few days in the refrigerator. It can be frozen as well. All right, guys, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed.